So while we're waiting for others to join, take a look at this. Think back to your first year teaching. If your principal told you that you were going to teach cybersecurity back then, you walked in the first day and you're ready to teach English or math or whatever it was, and your principal said, "Oh wait, nope, we need you to teach cybersecurity. Just kidding, you're not going to teach English." What would your reaction have been? Put a number in the chat while we're waiting for others to join. And I'm gonna minimize this so that I can see the chat. Session, here we go. All right. Okay. Seeing some 3s and 8s. Yeah, mine probably would have been either a 9 or a 7 as well. So I totally understand. We're going to actually come back to this a little bit later in the session. But yeah, I wanted to start with that little activity to kind of set the stage for this. All right, so let me just up here. Perfect. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Lindsay Lindsky. I'm in the College of Education at the University of North Georgia. And I've been very blessed to be a part of a lot of different cyber advocacy opportunities this year. And it's my hope that this session will help you become a cyber advocate at your school, because we need more people advocating for cyber, since yes, it's not a completely untapped resource. Lots of more and more schools are having their own cyber pathway, but compared to what we need it to be to fill the 600,000 jobs that are out there, it is still largely an untapped vein of gold for social good in schools. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. As we've already seen today, Eric totally just referenced this. I took this screenshot in May 21st of 2021 for this Money Watch article of 500, it was at then almost 500,000 jobs. And here we are a year later at 597,000 jobs. So that's just 100,000 jobs in just 1 year. So which is absolutely incredible that these are jobs that are unfilled. There's like a need for it at a company or a school or any business, you name it, and they cannot find someone to work in that position. And so it's a huge problem. And those are just the jobs that we know about. We don't know what the hackers are going to do next. We don't know what, goodness, look at quantum computing. We don't know what type of cyber stuff is going to come along with that. There are a lot of unknowns about the future. And so it's just a really big problem. And just like with any problem, say, for example, a medical problem, just like with any problem, you need a lot of different perspectives. So if you have a huge medical problem, you need doctors from a variety of disciplines to be able to speak to what could be feeding into that problem. And the same goes for cyber. You need a lot of different perspectives from people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different walks of life, different everything, to catch things that a homogenous group might miss. And as we know, cyber is pretty homogenous right now, and it is a problem. So we have two problems. We have the shortage of people in general, which is a huge problem, but we also have a shortage of diverse perspectives that could help us solve some of these issues. We don't even know what's coming. Basically, we need their diverse perspectives critically. And so essentially the cyber workforce is begging for our kids. They're saying, please bring your students to us. And they're bending over backwards, providing a variety of, goodness, it's almost overwhelming the number of different ways that you can learn cyber either for free, and then oodles of scholarships and military, JROTC, and on-the-job training. And you name it. There are so many different opportunities to learn cyber. So what is holding them back? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I hope to give you some tools to help you become a multifaceted cyber advocate at your school. And I say multifaceted because, there it's not just access. Of course we have, a lot of access problems, but we also, there are other levels and other dynamics that I've seen in my work over the past several years that I'd like to emphasize. So, but let me give you a little bit of context first. Where am I coming from with all of these things? So my cyber journey began in 2015. This picture was from last year, but my cyber journey began in 2015 when I just responded to an email. I wasn't a cyber teacher at that time. My PhD is in science education. My background, is middle grades science instruction, and I just responded to an email with a request from another professor on the UNG campus asking for some pedagogical tips about, for an upcoming Gen Cyber camp that they were having, and for the high school students. And that began my cyber journey. I got on board helping out with that camp, and then I co-authored a grant with Bryson Payne to run this. These are our first group of agents, our Gen Cyber agents. That stands for Advancing Gen Cyber Education for North Georgia Teachers. And that work led to a conversation with Alan Paller of SANS. So if you're not familiar with the SANS Institute, they're basically like the boards or the bar exam, because how doctors, before they can become doctors, have to pass their boards. And same with lawyers, have to pass the bar exam. For cyber, they want to know, what certificates do you have before you're given a job? And those certificates come from SANS. And so they are a leading voice in the cyber world. And Alan Paller was recognizing the need for the cyber workforce to shore up that cyber workforce. He got heavily involved in a game known as Cyber Start America. And Cyber Start America is, if you haven't heard about it, a free, totally free game that is open to all students in the U.S., high school students in particular, but like I mentioned in the chat a second ago, middle school students can also participate in the first level. And it is truly gamified. And students say, and teachers that I've talked to and students that I've talked to, they really say that it feels like a game. When you're in there, it feels like a game. And you know how much kids love playing games. And so they start with really super easy challenges like this, just binary type of challenge. And then there's a really good hint structure in there to help them along. And then as they solve challenges, they earn points. And the more points they earn, if they complete roughly about 20% of the game, then they are eligible for a national scholarship from the National Cyber Scholarship Foundation. And so Alan Paller of SANS asked UNG to develop a task force around CyberStart to get more students playing. And those students, because last year, CyberStart America has been around for 3-ish years. And so far in Georgia, we've only had about 900 or so students playing the game each year. And so the task force was designed to help get as many kids as possible playing. And so we started this task force, and Brian Cox is on there, as well as the Georgia Tech Research Institute STEM Outreach Office, Eric Toller, and his K-12 outreach person, Todd, are on there from the Georgia Cyber Center. And we have district partners giving us advice, like from Gwinnett County. And because of, and I'm happy to say that we, as of this morning, have 5,865 students playing CyberStart, which is super exciting. And one thing that really helped with that was that one of our a UNG trustee on our board of trustees raised $100,000 from the private sector to fund cash prizes for kids that do well in the game. Not only statewide cash prizes, but also district level prizes for the 10 districts of distinction that got the most kids to sign up. And each of those districts of distinction will receive a $5,000 prize to help build out their cyber programs in their schools, either build a train cyber teachers or build out a cyber range or whatever it is. And so This initiative was to help shore up those numbers, we need sheer numbers in cyber. And there are, preliminary talks about copying the model of what we did here in Georgia to around the country, which, would be really exciting. But that doesn't solve both of the problems, because we said we have two big problems. One is just numbers in general. The second is the lack of diversity. And so we have another project that we were working on as well, and that we're calling the ACCESS program. ACCESS stands for Addressing Cyber Career Equity for Student Success. And that ACCESS program it's a pretty small program right now. It's a pilot program in just 3 schools or so. And there are 2 goals for ACCESS. One is to provide incentives for diverse students to give CyberStart America a try. So it really is focused on CyberStart. And the second is, we kind of rethought when students can receive scholarships. And we developed a model called the Access Scholars, and we're giving some Title I kids that, qualify for free lunch. We're giving them some support to offset the need for, say, an after-school job, or, pay for a babysitter to watch their younger siblings if that's what's holding them back, so that they can continue playing and hopefully get enough points to get to the scholarship level. So that leads me to now that you understand the background of the context for how we got here, I want to talk about what did we learn in all of this. So I'm going to minimize this so that I can come over here and copy this from the chat, because I have a resource to share with you. And all right, coming back in the chat, and I'm going to post it here. All right, so this is a link to a Google Doc, and that will take you to the resources that I would like to kind of talk through. So because we have a number of different roadblocks on the road to cyber careers, a number of different roadblocks. And so that's leaving cyber in a largely untapped vein of gold. And some of these solutions that are on your resource are, in my opinion, worth their weight in gold. And so let's get started with those. And I mentioned earlier that this is going to be a multifaceted talk, because there are other barriers beyond just access that are causing problems. And so we're going to start with some psychological barriers. And, so I want you to think about this. You have to name it if you're going to tame it. I come from a neuroatypical family, and so that this, I know, is one of the favorite mantra among psychologists. I am not a psychologist. I'm not going to pretend to be, but this, I know, is one of the favorite mantras. And that basically means you have to really get at the root of a problem and give it a name and fully understand it before you can possibly move past it. And in my work over the past several years with students and with districts and with teachers, is that one of the main problems that we're not really naming is fear. Okay, so let's talk through that, because I think honestly, the biggest fear that many of us face as computer science teachers is a student's fear of rejection. So that's the students that say, "Oh, I'm not going to try cyber. I don't want to try CyberStart. That looks too hard. I'm going to say something and then everybody's going to laugh at me, and it's just not worth it." And so how in the world do we get past that? Well, I mentioned I come from a neuroatypical family, and so I love listening to the Attitude Magazine podcast. And I came across this podcast with Dr. Jerome Schultz from Harvard, and I've been sharing it with all of my interns and everybody I can think of, because it is so powerful. He's a neurobiologist, and so he helps you understand what happens in your brain and why students shy away from some things and why they are drawn to other things. And I do recommend that you skip those first 3 minutes. because there's a lot of housekeeping stuff in the beginning. But then after that, it really does apply to all students. Don't get distracted by the ADHD, intended audience, because tell me if this sounds familiar. This is a quote from about 17 minutes in. These are the kids that sit at the back of the room, pull the hoodies up over their head and put their heads down and listen to music and avoid all tasks. So basically this will help to, help us understand why students avoid challenging subjects like cyber. And honestly, the reason he hones in on is that students view difficult subjects like cyber as a threat to their safety. They don't put those words to it, but that's what's happening in their brain. And you might be saying, oh, wait, my class isn't, nobody gets hurt. My class is safe. And, yes, they might not get physically hurt, but, the students might think that there could be the chance of that psychological hurt, which is part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if students, as you know, Maslow's hierarchy, I'm sure all of you are familiar, you have to get through each of these basic levels in order to get to self-actualization, where they're actually using the information we give them in positive and transformative ways. If their physiological needs are not met, they are never going to progress. And the same goes for safety needs. And so if students perceive that there is a risk that a subject they're going to learn will be a danger to their personal security and their emotional health, then they won't do it. They won't sign up. Most of them won't, at least. And that goes, Dr. Schultz explains how it goes way back in our evolutionary heritage, back when, we were so dependent on our community for survival, and banishment meant certain death. And of course, now if you get embarrassed in front of a class, that does not mean certain death, but that is how our brains are wired, because back then it did mean survival. And honestly, we cannot fight the way our brains are wired. And so we need to, first of all, understand what's going on in our brains and be able to say, okay, this is what's happening. How can I work around that and mold my classroom and structure it in such a way so that students understand that this is a safe place? And that's where I'd like to draw your attention to Harvey Mudd College. I'm so impressed with what's going on there. And there's a link in your resource to point you to an article about them so you can learn more. But they're graduating more women and diverse students than any other computer science program in the country. And they, although they are a college, they're doing things that any classroom can mix in. So what is the Harvey Mudd special sauce? So rule number 1, and this is the most important rule, I think, for any computer science classroom, is no showing off. What does that mean? So say, it's the very first day of your cyber class, and you're sitting, you're new to this, and you're excited, but you're also a little bit nervous. And you're sitting there ready to learn, ready to begin your cyber journey. And then this kid walks in and he says, oh yeah, I hacked this mainframe last night. And, and then last weekend we had this cyber competition, and he's always the first person to raise his hand and show off his knowledge. That will make you think, I am so out of my league here. There is no way I'm going to be able to survive this. And so then Harvey Mudd, before students even step foot in the computer science classroom, they have a very, very explicit talk about how you are not allowed to show off in these classrooms. Don't show off your knowledge. Don't, be the only one to raise your hand, all of those things. So that's a really important piece for any computer science classroom. Also, they have their classrooms differentiated into teams. So they have their school colors, I think, are black and gold. And the black team are the students that have a little bit more of a background in cyber, and so they need to be pushed a bit more. Whereas the gold team are those that are new to cyber but want to learn, or new to computer science and want to learn. And so that makes it a little bit more welcoming. There's a stronger focus on creativity to make it more inviting for students, which is, important just in general, because like we were talking about earlier, we don't know what the future will hold. We don't know what the computing world is going to happen when quantum computing finally comes online. So we need to have that creativity, because essentially we are training students for jobs that don't exist yet. And so creativity has to be an important piece of that in order to be able to meet the needs of the future that we don't even know what they are. So, and then finally, having lots and lots and lots and lots of small wins, small successes early, frequently, and as often as you can. Because if it's just frustration after frustration, then they're going to get overwhelmed and want to give up. But those small wins, the questions that might be, even just some, yes, we want to ask higher order questions, but those surface level questions are important to be able to give those students the small wins early and often. All right, so that's that. That will take care of our basic safety needs, or at least, take some of the safety needs out of the equation. But what about that next level of Maslow's hierarchy? And these are, again, all things that I've seen in the work that I've done this year. But that next level of Maslow's hierarchy that's the belonging, because the second biggest roadblock is that students feel like, they're like, oh, well, I don't think people like me do cyber. They say, I'm not Sheldon. People like me don't do cyber. And that's the biggest misconception, I think, of all of them in the cyber world. And so the first thing that I think, just like last time, the first thing that needs to happen is that you need to understand why. You need to understand the real neurobiological and the underpinnings behind that. And for that, I recommend a book called Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. This is an image from that book, and you can see that the steps align with Maslow's hierarchy. And if the belonging step, that's what's supposed to be here, if the belonging step isn't there, then students will never make it to achievement. So how do we get them on that belonging step? How do we show them that they do belong in cyber and so forth? Now, first of all, one thing I think is important is to show them that you are wanted, you are needed. As students of all backgrounds are needed in cyber. So point them to the resources. This is in your handout as well. Point them to the resources that are pointing to that, and they're crying out saying, please sign up and give cyber a try, for students of all backgrounds. And but then, of course, another powerful way is examples. You have several examples on the handout, but I want to emphasize this one. So Jasmine Valentine is a cyber cadet at UNG. So as you might know, the University of North Georgia is also the Military College of Georgia. So 12% of our students are cadets. And Jasmine Valentine plans to commission into the military as a cyber officer when she graduates. And so we had her star in our Cyber Start video that we produced that is on the Cyber Start Georgia website. And so one of the things that she emphasizes in that video is something from the the Cyber Start America Executive Summary. And they're the 4 dispositions that are needed in order to be good at cyber. And those 4 might surprise you because at first glance, they don't seem to have anything to do with cyber. And this might sound kind of similar to one of the things that she was saying in the keynote, because the things that are needed in cyber are the cyber workforce wants students that are curious and love learning new things. They enjoy technology and playing around on different types of technology. They're good problem solvers. Cyber is nothing but problems that need solving. And also, probably the most important is that they are tenacious, because most cyber problems do not have an easy or obvious answer. And so those students that keep trying and keep plugging away, oh, I think I know what I did wrong. Let me try it this way. Those students are really valuable in the cyber industry. And so if students have these 4 things, then they are going to be good at cyber. And so So that is those are things to emphasize to students. Like, I've seen you do various things around school. I've seen how you're really curious and you don't give up easily and you're a good problem solver. I think you'd be good at cyber, regardless of what background they come from. All right, so those are the roadblocks that I think are the biggest among students, but there are still, are biggest among students in the classroom, but there are roadblocks after school, because a lot of cyber learning takes place in after school environments. And students that don't have access to programs like these that are available at many of the more affluent schools might they're at a disadvantage compared to their peers. And so what can we do about that? So CyberStart America, again, is another great equalizer, because it's freely available over the internet, and any of the high school students in the US can play it. But I also wanted to draw your attention back to what we talked about a little bit earlier when I was giving you the context. So that's where, the work of this access program could be really beneficial. So again, we have 3 diverse Title I schools from Gwinnett and DeKalb that we're working with. And again, the goals of that were to just get as many kids as possible playing CyberStart America, as well as supporting them with high school level, what we're calling access scholars, supporting access scholars, and to offset the need for after school jobs and pay for some, younger sibling childcare. And so we're excited that this started in January. The game cycle for CyberStart begins in October every year. So it's a little bit truncated. We didn't have as much time as we would have liked, but we started in January. And since January, we, across the 3 schools, have 249 students playing CyberStart America. And 4 of those students have already qualified for the national scholarship. And the access teachers that I'm working with say that there are others that are close. And so that's one thing I'd like to challenge this audience, is to possibly rethink when students can get scholarships. Like, if we're going to overcome these roadblocks and give students a chance to have these after school activities, then perhaps we could do something kind of similar to what the Access Scholars did, where we worked very closely with the teachers, and they watched the students and hand-selected students that were on free and reduced lunch and would really benefit from this opportunity. And so they helped us handpick these scholars, and now they're being supported to be able to continue their cyber learning even in after school setting, and so that they can keep getting those points and hopefully get to that scholarship level. So that's one of the challenges. But those 3 were student-based. What about other roadblocks? Because of course we're missing a whole lot of teachers. We have a need. If we're going to catch up and have enough people to fill the 600,000 cyber jobs, we really need a lot of cyber teachers. And there is a big lack of teachers due to mainly a need for training. But again, we have to name it if we're going to tame it. There is also a little bit of a fear there too. So we'll talk about this first one though. So the need for training, just like with students and the cyber industry bending over backwards to try to give them free opportunities to learn cyber, same goes for teachers. CyberStart America has a free teacher website. It's teachcyber.org is another excellent resource. And of course, I'm biased, but I really like Gen Cyber. This is our first inaugural group again of the Gen Cyber agents. And this program gets teachers for free, totally funded by the National Security Agency. It gets teachers in front of some of the best professors and cybersecurity teachers, because the NSA requires that cyber K-12 teachers be involved in the planning and implementation process. So not only are you working alongside some of the best professors and experts in the country for cyber, but you're also learning and growing alongside your fellow cyber teachers who are giving you, kind of translating some of the things you're learning and saying, okay, well, this is so that this is how you can use it in the classroom. This is what I did, and those types of things. And so that's why I feel like Gen Cyber is a super powerful resource. But let's talk about that other thing, because there are, we have to name it if we're going to tame it. And there are some of those fears. Like, think back to the beginning. When you picked a number, some of y'all were picking that, Sheldon breathing into a bag, because it is, when you don't know something, if you're a teacher and you don't know something, there's the fake it till you make it saying, it is scary. You're like, oh my gosh, the kids pick up on that. They're gonna tell, I don't know what I'm talking about, and they're gonna, this just gonna spiral out of, I'm gonna lose control of the class, and it just spirals in your brain. And so we see it as a risk to our own safety. It's just like the students, because our brains are wired the same way, and we still have that Maslow's, need for that personal safety and security. And we really can't fight brain wiring. So we as teachers also need to understand, okay, what's holding me back from learning cyber? And then after you understand that, and after you get the training, then I would like to challenge teachers to own the fact that you don't know everything. We're so scared to let the students know that we don't know something, but honestly, I feel like that is an opportunity to model the growth mindset among students. Because if you're up there and you're honest with them and you say, you know what, I'm learning this alongside you. I know what I need to know for today's lesson, and I'm prepared for today, of course. But if questions come up, we're going to work through it together. And that is modeling the growth mindset for them. And that's what students need to see, because many of your students that are sitting in class, they're nervous about this too. And so if they can look to you and say, you know what, she's learning this and she's growing and she's getting better every day, and I can do that also. And so I really feel like owning that fact is important, especially since so many of us come from other fields. Cyber is brand new compared to all the other disciplines. I mean, math and English and science, all the other disciplines have been around for hundreds of years. Cyber is brand new. And so many of us come here from other disciplines. My favorite example of that is my friend Autumn Sutton, who came to cyber. She was an English major, and English. I don't know. I don't want to misquote, but I know that she went from being an English teacher to also working in television, and then from working in television, she wanted to teach, and so she did broadcasting, and then that brought her into computer science, and then that brought her into cyber, and she. This is an article from the AJC about the Buford's efforts with Cyber Start America. That's at the bottom of your handout. And I really admire Autumn. We had a webinar recently for Cyber Start Georgia teachers, and hosted by Cyber Start America. And Autumn was on that webinar providing a teacher's perspective. And the first thing she said was that I'm not a cyber expert. So she's a great example of modeling that growth mindset like we were just talking about, because she is learning and growing and getting better every day. And it's so powerful to students. And so I really applaud her for that. And her background in English makes her the analogy queen. It's so fun to watch her teach, because she is able to take something so abstract and so hard to understand in computer science, and she'll say, oh, it's just like when you and your family are taking a flight, and this family has to go, this part of your family has to go here and here, and she can turn it into an analogy from everyday life that the students can relate to, and then they understand. And so having all these different backgrounds, it is a total strength in the field of cybersecurity. So I challenge you all to own it. All right, but even if we solve the student roadblock problems, and even if we solve the teacher roadblock problems, we still would not be able to have the 600,000 people that we need in cyber if principals are scared to have cyber in their schools, And so I have, especially with working in the Cyber Start Georgia and talking to districts and trying to get more districts involved in CyberStart America, I have grown more and more aware of the district level fears. Like, we're going to teach kids how to hack. Are they going to hack into the mainframe? Are they going to try to change their grades? Are they going to try to look at what other students have on their grades and steal their data? Are they going to hack a company, like some company in the area? And then when the company finds out that we taught them that, are we going to get sued? So there are like a lot of district and administrative fears. So there are some things that we need to address with that, because, yes, those are legitimate concerns, but I want you to hold that thought and consider these other things. So first of all, if you're joining this call as somebody from the cyber industry, or if you know somebody that's in the cyber industry, I want you to tell them how powerful their voice is. Because when the program officer for our Center for Cyber Operations, when we sat down with each of the 10 districts of distinction for CyberStart America in Georgia, those are the districts that had the most students signed up for CyberStart in Georgia. When we sat down with them and we said, okay, well, congratulations. How did you get here? Why, how did you have so many students playing CyberStart? They all said something about how somebody from the cyber industry told us we need to have this in our schools. So, like, for example, Dalton City Schools is one of them. And the teacher from Dalton City Schools said, oh, a friend of mine works in cyber, and he told me you need to have your kids playing CyberStart. Muskogee County is another one. They have Columbus State there, and Columbus State has a huge cyber program, and they have been really emphasizing cyber in Muskogee County schools. Same Columbia County, where Eric Toller is, they called themselves, we're Cyber City, Georgia, because they said that I hadn't heard that before, which I thought was cute. And so because of the Georgia Cyber Center, the Georgia Cyber Center has such a strong emphasis on we need cyber in the schools. And so Columbia County is ahead of the curve for sure in that respect. But the same went for all 10 districts of distinction, honestly. And there was that cyber voice is so important. So if you are in the cyber industry, get on an IT advisory board. I think every district is required to have an IT advisory board. And you need to be telling your districts, we need cyber people. You can't just assume that they know that, because, I mentioned those fears I heard, where they're going to hack the mainframe and this and that. They need to hear it from the industry saying, we need your cyber people to be able to get past those things, honestly, I think. And, this next example makes me laugh a little bit, because any sort of subject could be theoretically used for evil or for ill intent or for bad purposes. And I know this isn't real, but this is a perfect example, so, and this is a show, of course, from Breaking Bad. And he was on the show, he was a chemistry teacher, and he used his knowledge of chemistry to create methamphetamines. And so that's an example of knowledge being used for ill intent. But the same goes, goodness, we teach students English, but some of those students might go on to, have a, write misinformation, or, develop propaganda, or I don't know what. We teach students math. They could go on to use that for money laundering. Any subject could be used for ill intent. And honestly, wouldn't it be better if the students learned these things, because they can learn it all on the internet, but wouldn't it be better if students learned these things in a ethical way? On your handout, there are 2 different ethical hacking agreements. One that was recommended by the CyberStart America people. Well, actually, they both are, because it's the same one, just one is translated into Spanish. So both of those are on the handout, that I posted earlier, and I'll post it again in a little bit. And because isn't it better for students to learn cyber in an ethical environment where the teacher is emphasizing the ethical boundaries and the reasons why we have certain things? And also principals and district leaders, we really need to keep the focus on the real threats. Because yes, your concerns about students using cyber and using ethical hacking for, non-ethical reasons, those are legitimate concerns. But what's an even bigger threat? I'll show you. This is a screenshot of the CISA website, and there is a link to this website on your resource. And on the CISA website, look at the years here. Look at the years. They started this in 2004. And for each of these years, there is page after page after page of advanced persistent threats, meaning like threats to our hospitals, threats to our water supply, threats to our power grids. And yes, like we heard from Fulton County, threats to our schools. So major threats to our schools, denial of service attacks and ransomware, and schools have paid millions and millions of dollars. So these are the real threats. These are the real threats. Yeah, there might be a little bit of a danger with the students, but let's try to keep the focus on what the real threats are. And those are these advanced, persistent threats that are facing our country and our schools. And to be honest, we're never going to be able to supply the 5,900, well, goodness gracious, I can't even say it. We can't even supply the 600,000 people needed for these unfilled jobs if we don't have schools involved. So we absolutely have to have schools involved. And so that's why cyber security is that untapped vein of gold for social good on so many levels. Yes, it's giving underserved students access to, wonderfully, powerful and lucrative and influential jobs, but that's not the only thing. It's also just justice in general for the millions of people that have experienced denial of service attacks, or those who had their personal data compromised, or those who had their identities stolen and bank accounts drained, or, this one just absolutely kills me. If you go to missingkids.org, they've surpassed 100 million reports on their hotline, and almost all of the missing and exploited children in the world, almost all of those started online in the cyber world. And gosh, if we had the workforce that we needed, we would cut that problem off at its knees. And so that is just like something that I think really needs to be a huge call to action. But then there's also vulnerable nations like Ukraine and like what's going on in the world. So really it's social good for pretty much every human being in modern society. But speaking of Ukraine, I wanted to mention that because I think there's a need for cyber advocacy on a different level. And I feel like we are on the verge of something that we haven't seen in about 60 years. So I want to draw your attention to Sputnik. So you might be saying, why in the world are we talking about Sputnik on a cyber talk? Back in 1957, when people stood on their front lawns at night and looked up at the night sky and saw Sputnik, like this little dot, kind of streak across the sky, that was, a huge wake-up call for the federal government and for schools and for districts. And they said, look at what Russia's doing. Oh my gosh, we are not ready for this. We need to get our students trained up in science and technology and engineering, and and so it totally transformed education. There's a great article at the bottom of the handout about how Sputnik transformed education. And honestly, I believe, especially looking at what's happening in Ukraine and looking at the way things are evolving with that particular threat, I believe we are on the verge of another Sputnik moment in education, one where we take a step back and say, oh my goodness, look at what's happening in the world, and look at this like scary workforce shortage. We really have to do something. We have to change the way that we run our schools. And so, yeah, I do believe that we are on the verge of a Sputnik moment. And I'm so glad that this generation, because they really are the answer to this major national security threat. I mean, you think about national security threats and teenagers being the answer to national security threats, and it's just like mind-boggling, but it's true. It's true. And I'm so glad that it is this generation, because I am so inspired by them. I'm inspired by, because they just seem to be yearning for justice. Like, I mean, I look at examples like Greta Thunberg, or like the students in Parkland. This generation just seems to be yearning for justice. And so I think they are perfectly suited to fill this role and step up to the plate and be the generation that solves this national security workforce shortage and steps up to the plate. And so with that, I ask that you treat them with the importance that they hold and teach them cyber and become the cyber advocates that we need in our schools. And so have them sign up for Cyber Start America. And, I'd love to see this number keep ticking on up. So yes, Georgia, oh, by the way, I didn't say we're currently in the lead, which I'm thrilled about, ahead of Texas and California. But that pales in comparison to the real reason why we're doing this. We need to have our students signing up and stepping up to the plate to be the cyber advocates and the cyber security workers that we need. And so with that, I challenge you to become the cyber advocates and share other resources that you have found in the chat and become those cyber advocates that we need in our schools.
Lindsay, you did it just under time, and what a really great session. Like, I've been texting people, y'all need to get on this. This is really good. But fortunately, we do record it. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of awesome information. The questions in the chats have been great. We do go back to the main room for the data science and AI panel in just a couple minutes, but I had to personally get on here and say thank you, and you're getting a lot of clapping hand emojis in the chat. So really great job.
Thank you.
Oh, and did you share? I know you shared the document. Are you also going to share the slideshow, or is everything pretty much in the document?
The slideshow is mainly just pictures and screenshots. So the document handout is the best resource.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.